Hello, everyone. How you doing today? It's the last day of May, May 31st, and we're up against June, which is crazy. We're still talking hockey, of course. We still have a whole series to go. June has not begun. June is going to begin before the series, which is never used to be the case, right? But
No.
here we are. Russ, what do you got going on today?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it's always fun. Like we watch hockey and there's a lot of international players. With baseball, I like to watch the Japanese players and like to watch how they kind of have to try and figure out the game here because it's different. They pitch like a pitcher. I'm going to talk about Kodai Senga. They pitch on longer rest. The batters there are more really more in tune to making contact, where ours are more free swinging, and so there takes a little bit of time for an adjustment. And so, like last night with the Mets against the Phillies, Senga looks like he has finally made the adjustment. Like, don't get me wrong, he's having a really good season. He's 5-3, and he's got 70 strikeouts in 55 innings. So
Right.
he's got a pitch called the ghost forkball, and right now it is the most unhittable pitch in baseball because he struck out 9 yesterday in 7. But the thing is, when he throws it, nobody's like tattooing it. Nobody's hitting it hard. The exit velocity is not good on it. It's mostly misses. It's kind of like when the split finger first got into baseball. Well, now the forkball was like around like in the 60s. Then it was around maybe in the 80s. I think there was a guy who threw it, and then it just went away. And so now he's brought it back. And I have to tell you, I mean, this is his 10th game, and still there's not a good book on him. Like, teams don't have a good book on him yet. He has walked a lot of batters, but yesterday he didn't, so he may be figuring that out too.
No, nice. I got something strange that I want to bring up. By the way, Kevin, I loved your swing set today. That was really cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just we have a classic swing set here too. It's like the same kind of thing, but it's been a family thing from the beginning. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the Otter Dynasty. Okay, a show that I'm watching on the Discovery Channel right now, and it is the weirdest animal show I've ever watched. And we watch every animal show here because my son's an animal person. But this with the Otter Dynasty is basically if you could take Game of Thrones and merge them with actual otter footage, you would have it's harsh. There's bloodshed. There's babies being killed. There's all about it. I'm serious. This is all happening, and it's all being dictated. So what I think happened is this: like I think someone filmed a whole lot of otters in Singapore, like a ton of otters in different places in Singapore. And then they said, you know what? And someone wanted them to do that, and they didn't pay them for it. This is my theory. And they went to the Discovery Channel and said, you know what? I think I could make a story out of this somehow, but to be these different clans of otters fighting each other, and turn it into because matriarchal societies otters are, and so the women are leading the whole. The queen was killed. The mother, the daughter's coming back to revenge.
Story of otters.
This is all otters, and it's like
no, I know.
It's interspersed with just clips of Singapore skyline, like just back and forth, like just to kind of break it up from just otters. But they show the clips of it, and it's not right at all. It's nothing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you ever seen the meerkat one? Meerkat one, Russ?
Yeah, I've seen meerkat.
About, right? So there's a meerkat one where they give the meerkats personalities, and it's like that.
The meerkat one is good because there's a lot of comedy in it. I don't know if I would watch the otter one because of the bloodshed. Like that would bother me.
It is. There hardly is any happy moments. They go
the problem in the meerkat one. There's a lot of happy moments.
Right, Meerkat Manor. Right, it's called. And there's also one with prairie dogs. Pretty funny, but this one. Otter Dynasty. I guess they're taking off on the Ottoman Dynasty. It's the Otter Dynasty, and it is brutal. Like I don't watch violent stuff very often. It is the most violent thing I've watched on television in a long time. And it's otters. It's just footage of otters.
The only thing I can tell you is if you want to experience otters, go to my Facebook page. It's like a video from like 11 years ago. We were friends with a trainer who worked at the Philly Zoo, right?
Yeah.
And so we got to see the otters like right where they get trained and everything. Yeah. And I have audio of them like eating and screaming. And so otters, while they are super cuddly and cute, man, they can make a lot of noise.
Well, they're not friendly.
No.
Okay, right. And this thing will make you realize that, they are They're adorable, and they go down the slides into their pools and things like that at the zoos and all this. But they are vicious, and it's like
They want their food. That's all I can tell you.
this filming was all real, like it's real, like fights and stuff like that. But it's like one otter matriarch taking out the babies of the other group. It's like, oh my gosh, and it's just crazy. An otter getting run over by a car happens in this. It's just like, and it shows them taking a shovel with the otter and dumping it into a dumpster with a person.
Yeah, see, they should have done it to Sopranos music. If they did it to Sopranos music, I might have watched. Then I would say, okay,
it's Game of Thrones music, and it's like it's very Games of Thrones like. It is crazy. It's on Discovery Plus.
Are you still watching it? I mean, haven't you turned
I
it on?
can't not watch it at this point, Kevin. I'm three episodes in.
But you didn't watch Game of Thrones or any of those because they were too violent.
This is otters, Kevin. Like where does this go from here? Like it's already reached the level of violence like that you would expect in the finale. So how can it possibly? It's like there's 5 episodes to go. They're each an hour long. It's like
wow. There's a bit of hypocrisy in this. You won't watch fiction, but it's real, and you're real violence, and you're into it. Like that's a little scary. A little scary.
Maybe it is. Maybe I've changed. I don't know, but it's something.
As long as it's real, Eck can watch it.
So. Right. As long as it's real violence with animals, but fake violence with humans, no.
You notice I haven't said anything.
This is incredible, Mike. This is right up your alley. I'm telling you.
No, it's not.
I challenge you each.
Guy, Mike. You would like this. That's what I
challenge you each to watch a few minutes of this. Like I don't know if you have Discovery Plus or not, but you probably don't.
I'm watching 0 minutes of this. I am. I can't take the violent wildlife shows. I don't like them.
Yeah, I'm with Russ on this. Like I can't watch even in fake stuff. Like I don't know why they decided in fiction that we have to see real surgeries or when they have to make it gruesome. If you're watching something fake and it's just part of the deal, and my mind tells me, well, this is just fiction. But if it's real stuff, like that's right. I don't like hunting shows where they shoot the deer. Can't watch any of that. Yeah.
I was traumatized as a youth watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild.
Right. I don't even like this.
Wait, how did that traumatize you?
Watching the lion like eating an impala and ripping it to shreds.
Or just like the deer getting eaten by an alligator. Like it's just an alligator. Just
no.
Deer on the sideline.
In entertainment, Mike.
Yeah, I can't do any of that. So I just can't imagine.
Entertainment, Russ.
But Kevin, now you watch that, and you're like thinking to yourself, that's just the circle of life, and it's horrible. But you're watching it. That is what has to, alligators have to eat and all that stuff. You're watching this, and they're giving you the backstories behind why they're killing each other.
Yeah, that's
power, and not for food. It's because they eat fish. It's for power. And
wow, man, I'm with Russ and Mike. I'm staying away.
Chimps are the only animal that, besides humans, that actually wage real war with each other. Like chimps, there have been chimp wars where the groups of chimps have sneak attacked and murdered other chimps. There actually are chimp wars. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk hockey. Now that we've done that. Hello, Hockey World. Let's call it Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
We're going to talk the Erie Otters.
The Erie Otters. That's the tie-in. Thank you. Connor McDavid, Erie Otters. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, May 31st, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello, and the only Otter show I've watched is Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
That's a good one.
I'm Russ Cohen, and we're going to talk about a non-violent sport like hockey.
I'm Kevin Allen.
And that's utterly ridiculous. And I'm Eck, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where I have to say that once every episode, and the kids are like, okay, you got your one. Here we go. So we're going to talk today about, we have a lot going on for a Wednesday in May, like at the end of May and June.
We said it yesterday. It's like the league does not want any conflicting information or news coming out. So you're going to see today and tomorrow probably all this stuff come out. And then Friday's media day and Saturday is the start of the Stanley Cup Final. So there's going to be a rush in the next 24 to 48 hours of all this stuff.
I'm going to do a counterpoint on that, Mike. And Kevin, I'm asking you to change a paradigm for me here because does that make sense anymore? Like, does it make sense that they don't want stuff coming out during the Stanley Cup Finals? I mean, in all actuality,
I guess the idea is, I know what you're getting at, and I don't disagree with your point, because I sort of alluded to this yesterday. As like, why do we pay so much attention to the idea of it's a big event when we know that the teams that are involved, their fan bases make up the crux of the fans. It's not like the Super Bowl or the World Series where you have just casual fans that tune in. So why don't we just acknowledge that and move on? So why don't we say this too? Like, it's not big enough to say, well, let's limit what we're doing so that we can focus on this, because people are not going to focus on it. So let's just go ahead and do our business and
maybe if you're talking about the Rangers coach during the Stanley Cup Final game where people will watch.
They sprinkle it in. Like if they were to show, as an example, let's say Game 1 of the Stanley Cup is going on, and that's when the Leafs decide they were going to have their press conference, and they showed that press conference during the intermission. I'm fine with that. I don't think hockey fans would be adverse to that.
No. I'm fine with it too, but it seems to be the narrative in professional sports about this, because, I mean, do you remember a few years ago when I think Alex Rodriguez announced that he was going to opt out of his contract during the World Series? And it was like somebody had shot your mother. It was ridiculous.
But it makes sense in the other sports. It doesn't make sense in ours,
Yeah, right.
Because those are bigger events, So.
Yeah. I mean, do people suddenly stop watching the World Series, or do they come on the World Series because they want to hear what the guys in the World Series are talking about in between innings about Alex Rodriguez a little bit? And that might be interesting. Like, I think that there's something. I just think we're hanging on to an old paradigm that is just for no reason.
I don't have a problem with it because I'm a multitasker and I can walk and chew gum at the same time, and apparently the NHL can't. So
does NHL really want to focus for 12 to 14 days to be on Vegas and Florida?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily the best move. Like, I'm just,
and I'll stick by what I said the other day. I think for hockey fans, this is a great series. We don't care how big the size of the, cities are, but I don't know. I'm with you on this. I think we've just kind of outgrown that thinking.
Yeah, it feels like we absolutely have, and it's like things are so different now. Like putting out news on Friday at 5 p.m. All these old things that we used to do are kind of pointless because we live in a 24-hour news cycle where people are on Twitter all the time, and everything kind of exists. So it's I get some of it, but I still think some of it. But it's amazing how teams and the NHL hang on to those things. They hang on to them for a really long time. Like, I don't think there's going to be a point at which the NHL is going to stop saying next year, you can just announce anything when you want to. I don't think that's going to happen either. And I don't even know if they're officially saying it to teams, but teams are just assuming it. Like, I think that's also going on. So,
no, that could be. That's always been the tradition. And so, that you may be right.
Right. So, so let's talk about some of the other news before we're going to do the review of the next series because we're all here today for sure. We should be here Thursday and Friday too, some of us, but if we're not, we're all here now. So, but let's first talk about the coaching changes, or the coaching speculation that's going on now. Because we already talked about Brunette and all that. But now the big speculation of Laviolette in New York, Russ, feels like I keep hearing it's practically done. Like, and that it's just a matter of when, right? And I think that's actually a pretty good fit for them. I think it's not a bad idea.
Well, I think it's practically done now that Elliot Friedman has come out and said that Sheldon Keefe is pretty much staying in Toronto. So I think the Rangers would have interviewed him had he become available, but he's not shaken loose. And I think either Chris Drury will say that he interviewed Patrick Waugh or wait to interview Patrick Waugh until the end of the Memorial Cup. And then after that, I think they'll hire Laviolette. And it's good and bad. It's good because he has some of the traits that they need in a coach immediately. He's bad because he doesn't have any of the traits they need in a coach for the future. Because there's not much future when you hire Peter Laviolette. Like, we know this.
No, he's a finisher. He's a closer. Yeah. Like, as far as coaches go, he's a closer, right? Like, he comes in, team's pretty close, and then he closes it.
Don't you think, though, like, I would have thought that they would have gone for, offensive coaches are so difficult to find in the modern world, and Laviolette is that coach. So, is that what the Rangers needed?
Offense is not their problem.
I didn't think so either. That's why It doesn't seem to make sense to me, but
Defense,
There was such.
defense is their
Correct me if I'm
problem.
wrong, Russ. There's such a dynamic going on that Gallant didn't have his guys that he wanted to run the team,
I'm tired of that. Like, it's just,
But when you look at it, you look at the players who've come in. It's hard to argue that they aren't Laviolette's guys. I mean, he really did bring in they really are these players do fit Laviolette.
Well,
yeah, they're all offensive players. Yeah,
right. But that is under the assumption, and Russ would fight against this, that the players that they brought in at the deadline, Tarasenko, Kane, that they're going to keep them. And I don't think they can keep Tarasenko because he's going to want too much money. But
no, they're going to keep one.
Right, but supposedly Kane chose to go to the Rangers, and that's under the assumption that he would want to stay with the Rangers. And if he wants to stay with the Rangers, then you have to have an offensive coach, which, I said at the deadline that what Chris Drury did for Gallant was not a favor because the players that he acquired did not fit the way Gallant wanted to play. Now they're bringing in a coach, but there's no guarantee that Patrick Kane is going to stick around.
Right.
None.
Or he's going to be any good. I mean, we have to bring that up still.
That's the bigger part, Russ, what you're bringing up there. But I think he will stick around if they want him to. And I think
and that's fair. But the other thing is this. They still have 4 or 5 young players that are still evolving as players. And I do think they're all making small steps forward. And that's because they really haven't had a good developmental coach. So Laviolette is, again, not a good developmental coach. And I think that's part of the issue here, too, because otherwise, you might as well just trade some of these young guys now that you picked it with high draft picks, because if you're going to bring in old guys like Patrick Kane and keep looking for that kind of way of winning, then, what you did for the rebuild, you really only did halfway, or, there's another word.
I don't agree with Laviolette's not a good developmental coach. Like, I think when you look at teams like in the Flyers, with Richards and Carter, he did a good job. And then
they were already developed. They came into the AHL. They won a championship. Those 2 guys, when they got to the NHL, were really good. The only thing with Carter was he relied a little too much on one shot. Other than that, those guys were developed.
And that was 12 years ago. I mean,
but they're not. But is Lafreniere less developed than Richards was?
Yeah, I think I think
I don't think so. I mean, Lafreniere's been in the NHL for a couple of years. Richards came in as a rookie with Laviolette.
It doesn't matter. He the way he played the game was different. The way the way Lafreniere was playing in juniors, he's no longer playing in the NHL because they're asking him to be a different kind of player. So he had to learn how to do that. Same with Kakko. Kakko came into this league, everybody thinking he's going to be a big offensive player, and now he's their best cycler and one of their best defensive forwards while he's still scoring some goals. So these guys have had to change roles, and they've had multiple coaches already. Like, this is bad for young players when you keep revolving coaches.
But here's the narrative that I think we have to sort of pursue when it comes to the Rangers. Okay, so Chris Drury, as a first-time full-time GM, has brought in 2 coaches now. If Laviolette is the hire, first he brings in Gallant, and Gallant had a record in terms of getting to the Stanley Cup Final with Vegas. Long record as a respected coach, but coached a certain way, and that was just the way he did it. And now if he brings in Laviolette, these are now coaches, not developmental coaches, now coaches. That would lead you to believe that Drury is under a significant amount of pressure from up high to win now, when a couple years ago, this was a team that we thought could be brought along, not slowly, but brought along. They had a lot of young players, and now it's win now.
They accelerated already. They're already past that point. They went to the conference finals against Tampa last year. They went, to the conference finals.
But there's a problem with misinterpreting that act, and that's what I think.
They were ahead of schedule. They were way ahead of schedule on that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they didn't stay in rebuilding mode very long. I mean, they immediately had a chance, but they had in fairness to the Rangers, it was a unique opportunity. Panarin wanted to come there.
Right.
He wanted to play in New York. That was where he wanted, and they saw an opportunity, and they took it. Sure. And I don't know that Laviolette and Gallant are similar coaches.
No,
Gallant is an instinctual coach. He's not an X's and O's guy. And Laviolette is an attacking coach with real structure.
Intense X's and O's.
Pardon me?
He's an intense X's and O guy. Like, he is. He has like he's one of the smartest like hockey people I've ever met.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's very, very, very structured in his attacking. He has not had a reputation of being able to develop players, but you know, I don't know. Sometimes I always think that's you know, I'm not sure we actually know like how much, you know, some guys develop at different rates, and you know who their coach is at the time. Yeah, it certainly can impact that, but you know, I'm not sure that we really.
When he really didn't have a lot of like we came into Carolina when
Right.
Paul Maurice had gotten him pretty close,
So,
but not over the top, and he kicked him over the top. He comes into Philly, you know, where they were pretty much a mess, but he takes him to the Stanley Cup Final. It goes into Nashville, takes him to the Stanley Cup Final after
Yeah.
they've been. So he's like he's like the guy who takes you the next couple rounds, which is where the Rangers are.
right, but he doesn't last long. You know, he's like Gallant in that regard.
Right.
And by the time he leaves, everybody's unhappy with him.
Right.
You know, there's,
Yeah.
you know, it's the same thing with Gallant. You know, the shelf life is an issue for Peter.
Yeah.
You know, and he's his own worst enemy. You know,
Yeah.
he doesn't want to play nice. You know, with his.
When Peter left Philly, he left on bad terms, and when he came back, there was serious heat. Like he wouldn't even talk about the Flyers. I mean, and they didn't want to talk about him.
No, I mean, like David Poyle is one of the nicest human beings, and at the end, he had had enough. You know.
Yeah. You piss off David Poyle, you've really done something.
You know. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, he may be able to take him to the next level. We'll see. You know how that all works out.
Now,
I mean, he hasn't taken anybody to the next level in a long time.
No, and you know, like, well, we can say one thing: he's well aware of the surroundings in the Metropolitan Division because he's coached almost every team in the Metropolitan Division. Now,
I like him as a guy. Don't get me wrong. I do. I think if you interview Peter Laviolette, he's a really good interview, and very rarely do you catch him on a day where he doesn't want to give you some sort of answer. So I appreciate that, but I just don't think he's the right fit.
now there doesn't seem to be any like right now. There's not a lot of chatter about Anaheim and their decision or Columbus and their decision. There's been a lot of speculation about, you know, Babcock and Laviolette, and maybe those organizations are sort of waiting for other teams to make their choices. Kev, we want to talk about the Nashville thing in one respect. Apparently, they're getting a lot of heat from a lot of the coaching fraternity for the way that they approached the situation with John Hines, where he was in limbo, and they, you know, apparently Brunette was their leading guy, but they wanted to talk to Carberry and a few others. And Brunette wasn't free to talk until after New Jersey was eliminated by Carolina, so that held things up a little bit. But they left Hines, who has a year left in his contract, in limbo for about a month, and then decided to move on from him. And I mean, I can understand why coaches would have a problem with that, but you know, that's just, and it's surprising that Barry Trotz, a former coach, was the one who made that decision.
Completely agree with that. Totally shocking to me the way he handled this.
Yeah.
And Hines deserved better. Hines is a good coach.
Yep.
I think, you know, from what I heard, Trotz agreed with the assessment that Nashville team overachieved, that they really weren't all that good. And they hung in there. And I think Hines is a good coach. I think there was pressure there in Nashville, though. I think the fan base, the perception was that the coach was the problem. But I think the roster is the problem.
Yeah, the roster is the problem. Bad from a contract standpoint, and not getting enough out of these guys.
And again, is there anyone except me that thinks that this is an odd choice for Barry Trotz? I mean, what is Barry Trotz known for, and what is Brunette known for?
Right, they're opposite ends of the spectrum.
Opposite ends of the spectrum. Totally. You know, Trotz is a defense. Let's prevent the teams from scoring goals, and we'll figure out the offense.
But
Brunette,
I do have a but, Kev.
Yeah.
Because Trotz knows Brunette so well, I think he's going to talk him into playing the Predators' way.
So, okay. I mean, I guess the Florida Panthers could not do that.
No, I know. But
All they asked him to do was to be better defensively.
I think they're going to get Brunette to do that because remember, I think Brunette was a much hotter property until he left the Devils for a while and for whatever reason, right? And then when he came back, they were still really good. So it's good that he got a job, but I think he was more limited. He was much, much hotter before that. So I think he's probably had to make some adjustments.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, everybody evolves. Yeah. So maybe he's a different coach now, and I'm sure they've had that conversation. But I agree with what Mike said completely, 100%. It's odd how poorly Barry handled this, given, and isn't he involved in the coaching, whatever that kind of organization is? I
would think so. I thought he
was probably the longest standing member of it.
No, but I thought he was kind of active in it, and
the only thing I said yesterday, I was mad at the way they did it, but the excuse kind of was, they took a while to sort of get Barry in there in the position, signed in the position, so then he kind of had to do things quickly. But Mike said he did keep Hines in the loop, but again, you dumped him at a bad time.
Yeah. Couldn't. It reminds me of what happened. Remember San Jose? They did that as well. They, kept that.
Was that with Ron? Was that with Ron
Bugner?
Oh, Bugner. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so news just breaking, and it's been breaking since last night, but apparently officially announced just moments ago. Chris Johnston from TSN reporting officially that Brad Treliving is the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not surprising. There'll probably be a media availability tomorrow. He apparently was the overwhelming first choice of Shanahan and really didn't come off of that ever since. And then a few days after Kyle Dubas was let go, Treliving's name was the natural direction for them to go because he had just been a general manager. He's well prepared to handle sort of the bureaucracy of ownership, dealing with multiple owners in Calgary, dealing with, and his family, his father is the owner of Boston Pizza. So he knows, corporate, the way machinations, corporate world works. Not a bad general manager, Kev, but the reaction that I've heard from a lot of people is sort of like, this is a Menza pick. He's not terrible, not great, sort of like,
Well, that's the media reaction, but let me just throw this out too. The media has been sort of, about it. But this was my take on it. Brendan Shanahan, sort of cut his teeth in management from working at the league, and the league loves Brad Treliving. They think he's buttoned up. He does everything right, just for the reasons you mentioned. He's grown up in a corporate environment. He's very professional. He presents well. He follows the league rules. He's engaged in the GM meetings. There's a lot going on with him. And they just think, this is the kind of person we want sitting in the GM chair. He's a good guy. And I think Shanahan got to know him, I'm guessing. This is total guess, but I assume he got to know him when he was at the league.
Either that or the Board of Governors meetings.
Yeah, for sure. So I just think this made a lot of sense for him. He's going to have a working knowledge. He's going to appreciate what he brings to the table. And, there's a couple of kinds of general managers. You have the general managers that were former players who came up through and then sort of learned about management. And then you have guys who were good management people that sort of came up sort of a different way. And that's sort of Treliving was, not the star NHL player who, has kind of come in that way. So I think this is a good hire. I think you need a kind of a strong corporate style guy when you're in Toronto.
I think the reason they hired him is, he's all the things Kevin said. He's also a bit boring. And I think Toronto wanted things to be a little more boring now post Dubas because they had enough histrionics for a little while. And also, I think Shanahan will have more influence on Treliving, and I think that's another factor in this hire. I don't think Shanahan was going to hire anybody that he felt like he was going to have to go head to head with, like he did with Dubas this past season, as was later reported. So I think that's the reason. Will he do the best job? I don't know about that. I think Treliving has his good and bad, like all GMs. But if they're going to start bringing in a lot of Calgary influence, I don't think Calgary's been a good organization for a while now. So
we'll see how that unfolds. I mean, the one thing I think that's right on is that, after and like I said, I like Kyle Dubas, and I think Kyle Dubas did a pretty good job in 5 years as Leafs GM. But clearly, the autonomy that he wanted, that he sort of demanded, and didn't get when they dismissed him, is something that Treliving didn't ask for, because if he was asking for the same thing, he wouldn't have gotten the job. So now we'll see what direction they go. Like, they have a lot of things in the hopper that they have to get done before July 1st. If possible, contracts to be signed, possibly trades to be made, the draft. He won't be involved in the draft apparently, because that was one of the conditions of him being made available to negotiate with other teams, to talk to other teams. The interesting thing here, Kevin, I'd like to get X of feedback on this when he comes back on, is the Dubas situation in Pittsburgh and how it might be tied to what's going on in Toronto. The talk was that Dubas was going to have to make a decision. It was in his court, and he'd have to make a decision about the Pittsburgh job either yesterday or today. Hasn't come down yet. Right now, the hierarchy in Toronto, Brandon Pridham, their assistant GM, Wes Clark, Ryan Hardy, a lot of the guys, Haley Wickenheiser, everybody that was brought into the Leaf organization are Dubas acolytes. They're all Dubas hires. Some of them have lengthy contracts. Some of them 2-3 years. Some of them maybe are up at the end of the year. Does Dubas feel comfortable going to Pittsburgh where he can't bring his hierarchy along with him? And will the Leafs let them go? I mean, you could have Brendan Shanahan sitting at the draft table by himself if he let everybody go to Pittsburgh if Dubas got hired as GM. So it's a comfort level of what, whether Dubas will want to go someplace without his sort of support staff, or whether he'll take a year off and wait for some of those contracts to expire and then go someplace else. That's the interesting thing that's going on right now that we won't know probably for another 36 to 48 hours.
I don't know that I've ever heard of, and Russ, you've been around, I don't think I've ever heard of a GM that didn't make a move based on bringing his guys with him. Like, I think,
no,
everybody likes their guys. There's a long history of bringing in guys you trust, but I've never ever, I doubt whether that's a major factor.
Yeah, I think, I told Mike this, I think he's taken the job, and I think there'll be one or two that he'll either offer a higher position to try and get him away from the Leafs, or just wait till their contract expires and get them away from the Leafs, because apparently they do have some contract issues in the organization. And I think he'll exploit those weaknesses, but I don't think that'll stop him from taking the job either.
And it's standard operating procedure for new general managers to come in, the old regime, they draft, and then all those scouts are without work the following week. I mean, that happens so often.
It does.
Because the GM does want to hire, his scouts, new guys, or guys that,
the foot soldiers, there's certain ones that he's going to want, no question about it.
Right. Yeah. That he's just going to be comfortable with. And the same is true of the management staff. I mean, most GMs do want to bring in their assistant GM that they like, or, maybe he's got, and so,
after a couple of years, Kev, this turns into a rebuilding job anyhow, and he's good at that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. He's been through it. I mean, yeah. So that's true. No, I agree.
They're going to, we've spoken to some people about it, and it looks like maybe 2 years more they'll hang on with this, we'll try and win thing, and then that's it. The wheels will come off and they're going to have to rebuild. So, and he's a good guy for that.
I was working a little bit on the Brad Treliving thing, which you guys, I heard you talk about anyway. But when I got that's why I went off originally, because I was trying to get the confirmation on that too. But I
thought you were trying to confirm deaths in the Otter show.
No. That's already been done. But the Brad Treliving thing is I know you said something, Kevin. I was listening, and that you said something along the lines of like he is well respected, he is well put together, and I do agree with him. But he's also well known for being able to take orders from above too.
Yeah, I brought that up.
You brought that up. Okay, cool. You brought that up too. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's an interesting situation. Like, how much control will Shanahan have now? How much more control will he have now than before? Or will it be something that we see in a different way? Is it something that they thought Dubas was too? Dubas had definite opinions, like he was an opinionated guy.
Well, like Dubas, I believe that Dubas, and the reason that things fell apart was that Dubas wanted more autonomy, wanted more ability to go to the MLS&E board directly, not pass it through, Shanahan. There were apparently deals that fell apart or that had a time constraint on them where he had to go to Shanahan, then to the board, then back to Shanahan. It's like, he wanted the authority to maybe cut through the red tape a little more. And I mean, there are some people who perceive that as him usurping Shanahan's power. Now, I don't know, but all I know is that I think that's a factor. But other general managers have succeeded in a level of bureaucracy that thick. So I mean, I could see how that could be frustrating, and that maybe that was something that Dubas played on in terms of leverage to get on his new deal. Because honestly, look at the changes that are going to happen in Toronto over the next year or two. You're going to probably have to replace most of the organization because they're all Dubas hires. They're all going to go where Dubas is going. And, he probably thought, okay, the organization doesn't want to do that, so I got a card to play here. And he played it, and Shanahan said, you're gone. So they're going to make those changes. Now, Treliving is well respected. Now, nobody knows how he'll succeed in Toronto. He's made big decisions. He's been in a Canadian market. I mean, of course I'm interested because I cover the team where this is going to go, but he's going to have, and I think he had the one advantage that he has over other candidates, Kev, is he was in the league last year. He, like some other GMs that they talked to, whether it be Peter Chiarelli or Mark Bergevin or Jason Botterill, even though some have been assistant GMs or advisors, they haven't been decision makers for a couple years. And things in the NHL change pretty quickly. So the fact that Treliving was it was a GM of a Canadian team just mere weeks ago is an advantage for him to get on the ball running.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think what happened with Toronto, though, speaks to the idea of it makes you wonder whether, and I guess the Penguins have already decided they like the structure, but, we're slowly sort of moving to the idea of having both a director of hockey operations and a GM. And, you wonder now when you look back why we're doing this, because that the Dubas situation points out kind of the flaws with that. If you look historically, and let's just look back, like, the Edmonton Oilers dynasty, Glenn Sather worked directly with Peter Pocklington, the owner. Now, I understand that, we don't have those individual owners, that you're dealing with corporate now. But that, to me, that seems, if you think about it, because what we've seen how this worked, it makes more sense to do it the old way, because, usually now you're just going to a guy that doesn't know a lot about hockey. And what's it matter whether it's a director of hockey operations or.
Right. By the way, speaking of a team with a singular owner, the Rangers, Thomas Boyle likes to say breaking. It really isn't breaking. It was 23 minutes ago that TSN posted that John Hines could talk to the Rangers. So they've asked permission. So they're going to look at him. Do I think that's better than Laviolette? Maybe.
Yeah. But, just going back, Harry Sinden and Jacobs, Ken Holland and Mike Ilitch, so I get the whole Dubas thing and why maybe that was an issue. I mean, why isn't just Brendan Shanahan the general manager? Yeah,
exactly. Couldn't he be a general manager? He could definitely.
Yeah. I mean, if Yzerman can, he can. Yeah, sure.
Right, exactly.
Why isn't he the general manager, Kev?
Because I do know why he is, because he's more he's safer. Where he
Yes.
is.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm glad you said it because and then I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, didn't he actually say that? I'm pretty sure he had said that. Yeah, I'm not.
It would be a remarkable amount of candor from him, but he talks to the Toronto media at the beginning of training camp and at the end of the year, and very rarely in between. So
Right.
I'd love to have.
Well, that's kind of Eiserman too. So,
Yeah. True.
But I'll just say this: we had Brian Metzer on our off the post show yesterday, and he did mention during the show that there was some chatter about sort of a duality, like team president, general manager, like it was with Burke and Hextall, and there had been some talk about Eddie Olczyk and a couple other names, and Olczyk was in the mix for the team president for the Flyers, so it would be ironic if he ends up the team president of the Penguins. And I think he was in the mix for team president for Chicago a couple years ago.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so
in a couple of situations, yeah.
I think Eddie Olczyk would be fantastic in that role because he's got the personality to deal with ownership, and he's very hockey knowledgeable. So
and popular.
Yeah,
popular guy too, which helps. Like Keith Jones in Philly is definitely a popular choice here. That's
he's popular.
That's a big thing that helps. That helps ease things down. So we should get into this Stanley Cup Final, kids, because. Like we talked about, I'm really excited about it, and I think that this is definitely one of the harder ones to call. I mean, we have seen two teams here who both have, Florida's just on a roll and a half. Like they've won 12 of 14, of the last 14 games they've won, which is craziness.
But let me just ask this and get this out of the way, because all we're going to hear, Kev, over the next few days is, well, the amount of time in between their sweep of Carolina and the start of the, that's going to sort of sap their mojo. I mean, I think there's a point to that, but when it gets mentioned so much, it gets to be almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I mean, I think historically it has impacted the starts of the game one.
Yeah, no question.
But that's it. Yeah, and then they get into it.
Yeah, by the second period, you're fine. But But at the same time, I do think it saps the energy from the game. I think that this kind of delay between even
it could be more sloppy. Yeah.
Yeah, even Vegas, like Vegas has a week practically, right? So it's like we're talking about. I mean, that's just, and they won 6 games. That seems inexcusable to me. Like like a 6-game series shouldn't have a week off after that, because really what you're doing is just leaving. When we go from a hockey every night scenario. Where the playoffs we've had hockey almost every night. There's been a couple nights when we're having night games, but every night's pretty much to no games for 9 to 8 days.
Yeah. Well, it's not ideal, that's for sure. But as they always say in the NFL, it's multi-millions and millions of dollars. So we're going to do what TV wants. So so
would it be better to get started before the NBA playoffs? I don't know. I'm just thinking. I don't know.
I think better, yes, but apparently, again, like somebody. I was asked when I was on the show, who's the big winner in all this? And I'm like, TNT, because they get to basically tell the league when they want to put these games on and what day and everything else. They're the winners.
What's the over under on appearances by Charles Barkley during the Stanley Cup Final? I would say
he'll have one every game.
Yeah, I hope so. Obviously he's very good for ratings.
He's very entertaining.
And he loves the sport.
He
absolutely loves it. So
so let's talk about this series, Kevin. Where do you go? Where do you go with this thing?
Well, I'm going with what I stuck with it. It didn't serve me particularly well in round 2, but it served me well in the conference finals, where I said I'm taking the teams that are playing the best. And I took Vegas and Florida, and I'm sticking in the final. I'm doing exactly the same. I just think Florida's playing the best overall. Not to take anything away from Vegas, because I think they've also played well all the way through. I mean, their goaltending has been good. Aiden Hill has been, one of the big surprises of the tournament, and he'd never been in a playoff game, and then ends up as a replacement goalie and has played well at a couple of shutouts and has gotten the job done.
Yeah.
But I think Bobrovsky has been more impressive. And I just think they've got it going. I mean, it's hard to remember anybody having the impact in one playoff year other than, the Gretzkys and Lemieux than Kachuk's had. He's
Yeah.
been involved in 8 game-winning goals. He's just been a real leader, playing, more physical than he has in the last couple of years. I remember at the start of this year, I brought up how his hits weren't, he was basically playing a reputation. He just didn't have the number of hits he had in, previous years. Well, in this postseason, he's been a physical force, but it goes beyond that. I mean, they've had all of their secondary scoring guys have contributed. Barkov's had this one spectacular goal that we're all going to remember, and they're playing well. And then, Vegas has got it going on as well. I mean, Carlson, besides being a two-way force, has got, set a team record. Now they're only 6 years old, but still, 10 goals and that he has had, and they've got everything going. And the Misfits, the 6 guys from the year have all playing well. So I'm with you about this just being a spectacular series on paper, and it's kind of a toss up, but I'm going with Florida.
It feels like almost like what I like about the World Series, when you see like the two different leagues playing each other, where you have no idea what's going to happen. It feels like that to me a little bit for hockey, because it feels like because Florida had such a different path than Vegas had, and such different kinds of teams. And Florida's path is by far the hardest anyone's ever had to get there. You got to take that into account. And the fact that they're 12-2, playing the hardest path they could ever get to, it's hard to say that anyone's ever been playing better going into the Stanley Cup Finals than Florida is right now, Kev. I mean, you're right about that. There's this is as good as you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, but my pick is I'm going with Vegas.
Yeah, no, I bet.
I said all that, but I think that watching we forget how good a team Dallas is. When you watch Vegas play Dallas is a really good team.
Yeah.
And Vegas made them not look like a really good team at all. And they made Ottinger look normal, and they made Dallas look even normal. And Dallas was coming in looking really good. To
the point that Dallas is now questioning the direction of their franchise and trading Jamie Benn or things of that nature, which I think it might be a little bit of an overreaction.
Well, I think it is.
Oh, but they wanted to trade Jamie Benn for a long time. It's almost like this is just a nice rationalization.
That's true.
Now we've got a reason we can sell it to our fan base. So
I got 9.5 million reasons why it's gonna be tough to do it. But
right.
Oh yeah, that's been their whole problem.
Yeah,
they haven't been able to trade them.
But Vegas is deeper than anybody that Florida's played so far as lines go. The fact that they've got 4 lines running, I think, are Florida runs 3 lines kind of, and like the 4th line once in a while, not as much, but they really are running 4 lines, and they are faster transitionally than anybody that Florida's played so far. I think the transition that from defense to offense is just with Vegas is just crazy. And now Florida has a really fast transition game too, so we should see some really fast paced up and down. The good thing about both these teams is they both love to score. They both rather would play shootouts with each other. So I think
but they're not going to do that in the Stanley Cup.
They're not going to do that in the Stanley Cup Finals, but they both have it in them.
Yes.
So you'll see like a 1-0 game, then a 5-4 game. Like you'll see that'll happen in the series. I think you'll see that both those like where they play tight to the vest, but then when they both start shooting with each other, they'll both just gun at each other, and that'll be fun to watch. So you'll get, because they both really have made it their mission to be able to win both those kind of games. And Florida, that's Paul Maurice's whole thing was we can only win when we outscore a team last year. This year we're going to learn to win a low scoring game, and that's what he's done, and that's what Florida has done very well. There
was a lot more defensive buy-in from Florida this year than I've ever seen that anybody thought that they could do, because last year, they were more wide open than Toronto was last year.
They were. They set a record for goal scorers last year. Like they were really that offensive, and they have that in them still, and they want to do that. There are horses being held back, and you see it once in a while. They had like one high scoring game, I think. At least one high-scoring game in these playoffs where they went and did that. They won 6-5, I think, somewhere along the line. I forget what was it, who that was against. But might have been Boston, maybe. I think it was Boston. But this is I just think that as good as Bobrovsky is, I thought Ottinger was really good too. I think this is going to be hard. I think this is Vegas' series in 6. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this before I make my prediction. I think it could be the most physical Stanley Cup final since Boston St. Louis in 2019.
Yeah.
Because Florida plays that sort of balls out physicality with Bennett running people and Gudas doing what Gudas does, and he does it very well. And Tkachuk, we know Tkachuk likes to do that and can throw an opponent off of their game by doing that and getting underneath their skin. Matthew Tkachuk is one of the best forwards in the league. He's also a 6'3", 200-pound rat, and getting underneath the skin. He didn't. The one team he really didn't get underneath the skin of was Toronto. He was sort of off in that series, but against Boston and against Carolina, he was very aggravating.
That's because Toronto didn't want to play physically. Tkachuk is kind of like that monster that, like the old thing with Eric Lindros when he was, when he was here in Philly was like, don't wake him up,
Ideally, you don't want if you're Paul Maurice, you don't want him to do that for one simple reason. He's so valuable as an offensive contributor, as a playmaker, as a game-winning overtime goal scorer that you don't want him. Let Ryan Lombard do that. Let other players do.
You do and you don't, Mike. I mean, he is better when he's got that edge on him too. Like he's not to be Tkachuk. He has to have a little bit of pissed off anger going inside of him. The Game 3 came in when Carolina came in for Game 3 into Florida. The very first shift, you remember, Tkachuk goes around the back. It's an icing or something like that, and Tkachuk is there and just slaps the stick of like one of the Calgary players who's like poking at him a little bit. And that was when you knew Tkachuk was like he's engaged, that's him. And the rest of the game he was on fire. And it just ended up winning the game, obviously. But you could see that if you don't, I think in Toronto there was a lot of skating, a lot of offense being played, and Tkachuk didn't get emotionally involved as much as he needed to or should have.
My time's getting a little thin. Mike, what's your prediction?
Mine's Vegas in 6.
Oh, you said that. Okay, I wasn't sure because I had to look out for that.
Go ahead.
So I look at it like I still think Vegas home ice does mean something. Though they've never got booed from their fans, and I do think they do get energy from them, and so I think that's something that could come into play. Aiden Hill's done better than we all think. He may not be great, but he's done better than we all think. I think Vegas knows how to play the uglier game better than Florida. I think Florida's commitment to it is better, but Vegas really does know how to do it, and they did destroy Dallas when they needed to at the right time. Sure, they let Jamie Benn get back there, and then when Ben got back there, they crushed him. So that showed a lot to me. It did. Guys like Marchessault have been great. Carlson with his 10 goals is better defensively. Like he's a shutdown guy. White Cloud doesn't get enough, talking about. Like there's a lot there, Pietrangelo. But in the end, I just look at it like I feel like Vegas has more experience. They're more experienced than this. They've added the right guys. They're strong down the middle. And so I think Vegas is winning in 6 too. And I do love the fact that there'll be a new champion. That's great.
Yeah.
But I just don't, and I rode Florida for all these rounds, but I feel like their ride is going to be up because I just feel like Tkachuk being a jerk just isn't going to be enough this round. Like it's going to take more than that.
Yeah, it wasn't really Tkachuk being a jerk. Really wasn't why they beat the Bruins. And Vegas is a lot like the Bruins.
Yeah,
similar made teams. Bruins have, you would think, better goaltending, but it didn't show up for them as better goaltending necessarily. But besides that, defensively, they both have the big guys, the McAvoys, the Pietrangelos. They both have the depth. They both have the well-rounded team.
But Boston's top 2 centers were both hurt, and we've learned over the 3 rounds that Vegas up the middle is stronger than most teams in the with Eichel, Carlson, Stevenson, and then even in your fourth line, if it's I don't know if it's Roy or Colasar or whoever's playing that center on that fourth line. They're strong up the middle, and I mean I think they can combat what Florida has with Lundell and Barkov and whoever else.
And I loved that Cassidy said that they played in the basement with the Coyotes. I don't care that he had to apologize for that.
Oh,
it's great because he has that kind of emotion.
Yeah.
And And that matters. Like that emotion matters. Like
Does.
I've seen Cassidy in press conferences, and Maurice is always more like calculating and thought out, and Cassidy is just like off the cuff. Like whatever
Very
he
much
feels, you're gonna know.
Yeah, very much so. Agreed. Totally. No, I think that's 100% true. And yeah, we're gonna. I mean, I think it's gonna be a great series. It could go like Florida could sweep them. It's just like they could be playing so well.
No, they're not gonna sweep them.
I don't think they're gonna sweep them either. But my gut thinks
They
it's
got
gonna
a
be.
chance. They're a good team. I mean, there's no
They're
doubt.
a very good team, and they're playing so well that the first couple games are going to really be telling.
But I can see Bob giving up like a goal or two on like 5 shots to start the first game. I can.
Yeah, I could see the first game being a real tough one for Florida, but I could see them taking the second game. Like I could see that happening that way pretty easily. Like I do think that Florida, it plays a lot like Dallas, and that does help Vegas coming into this, because Vegas has just played against Dallas, who might be a better version of Florida in some ways, like that's the reality. It's me. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But that's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Enjoy another night without